deputy mayor of New York City for all kinds of wonderful social justice, economic justice. Julie, it's very exciting where you are, what you're doing.
It's very exciting. It's the first ever deputy mayor for economic justice, and it is for the first mayor for in so many ways, with a very clear vision for what we need to do to make life better for all New Yorkers.
Oh, that's fine. I can't think of anybody I would rather see in that position
Oh,
than you. I mean, you are like the ideal deputy mayor for
oh.
economic justice. I mean, you ought to be the president of the United States for economic justice.
That's very, very kind. Well, I mean, I am really thrilled about the vision of this mayor, where affordability is the name of the game, but in a way in which we are going to focus with laser precision on bringing prices down for people, but without compromising on wages and working conditions. Right? We
Well, that
understand.
you are.
Yeah.
It's music to my ears, Julie Sue. By
I
the way, just make sure that you give my very best to the mayor. I mean, he's doing wonderful work, and we are all so proud of him. And all of America is watching you guys.
I will tell him, but he's a fan of yours too. Maybe he'll watch this as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm a fan too. He and getting to watch him up close, he really believes in what he says, what he's here to do, using the full power of government for good and remembering those who've been left out for far too long, right? He wants those people to be the center of our decision making here in City Hall.
Well, it's great you can do that in City Hall and New York City, but you also have a federal government to deal with. You have a state government to deal with. You have New Jersey and you have Connecticut to deal with. I mean, it's not exactly as if you have a free hand, right?
Yeah, no, no, that's right. But I mean, part of it is, I think there is just such tremendous power within the city and what the city can do to, through what we've done in just the first 6 weeks, right? Executive orders to attack junk fees, enforcement of basic labor laws that protect deliveristas and taxi workers, really being, childcare, right? Really being clear-eyed about what he promised and step by step and methodically delivering on them. And I think the other thing that's so amazing is that the vision of being able to see those who've been left out of city government, and then being able to create policy for them. It's something I know you know well because something you've always done with any power that you've had. But I think it allows us to imagine very different outcomes, right? When you center working people, there's been a lot of questions about, well, what do we say about economic development? Well, for so long, economic development has been about what's good for business and measured by aggregate profits to the private sector. We look at economic development much more broadly, right? We believe that you should think about workers not just as a need, but like what happens to workers with economic development? How well are they doing? Are we creating good union jobs? Are workers better off? Have we closed poverty gaps? All of those are the ways that we're going to measure economic
Isn't
development in
that
this.
what we ought to be doing everywhere in America? I mean, instead of looking at economic justice and instead of looking at the economy as if it's the stock market, or it's corporate profits, we should be looking at the economy as if it's working people. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what the economy really should be, right?
yeah.
That's how we should define the economy.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's also the only way you make sure that any investments, any, public dollars, public land, public assets are actually used to benefit the most people, right? It's a way of being good stewards of public money, frankly, and making sure that that we think about not just prosperity for a few, but really, shared prosperity for many. I think about it as, we don't care just about how people who sit in C suites are doing. We care about what those who clean the C suites, how they're doing too.
One thing that you told me about when I talked to you last was finding particular laws that had not been enforced,
Mm.
or at least legal authority, I should say, that has not been used. Can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, I have long believed that um, oftentimes in government, there are tremendous powers that have been underutilized. And maybe some of that's just through habit, right? I think that through people taking a view that government has to do the safest and most conservative thing. And I always say that there are authorities and powers that need to be unleashed for the good of working people. So, for example, here in New York City, delivery drivers have advocated for a package of protections for them for around wages, around tips that are really quite robust. And it is our job to make sure that we are enforcing them. You still have these app-based companies who try to find all kinds of ways around it, and once wages go up, they try to steal tips in some other way. And we are forcefully enforcing the laws and sending a very clear message that for those companies who've decided that it's cheaper to break the law and the chance of getting caught are slim and the consequences if you do get caught are minimal, that those days are over. Part of the new era is that if you don't want to play by New York City's rules, you don't get to play in New York City. I think
This
that's a
is
really important message.
This is an incredibly important point, Julie, and I wanted to emphasize it because you were Labor Secretary of the United States. I was Labor Secretary of the United States. What we both saw, I'm sure you saw it as much as I did, is that you have a law on the books telling a company what it can and cannot do. And if it's not enforced, it might as well not be there.
It's just
Right?
words.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so
That's
what
exactly right.
And so what you're doing is you're finding laws and authority, and you're saying we have to enforce this, and if it's not and it has not been enforced in the past,
Yeah.
so terrific.
terrific.
That's right. And we're, enforcing all of the investigative tools we have too, right? Sometimes, when you end up with a climate in which investigations are considered optional, right? In which the targets of those investigations don't comply or try to find ways around it. I think that's also terribly damaging. It's damaging also to the credibility of government. And then when workers come forward and they report violations and they can't get their rights enforced, that also compromises the credibility of government. The other thing that's so exciting, though, Bob, about this role is that there's the enforcement piece. There's also the economic development and growth piece, right? How do we look at growth in the broadest, in the way that's most broadly beneficial? And we measure our growth by how well working people are doing. And then there's also the arts and culture piece of this portfolio, which I feel like is a way of saying we don't just want working people to get by. We don't just want working people to get the basics. We want them to truly get to enjoy the world-class arts and culture that brings people from all over the world to New York City. Why shouldn't workers also get to participate in that? And affording that is about money and making enough and making sure that they get all of their pay, but it's also about time. Right? People can't enjoy the good things in life if they don't have time, if they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to piece together a life. Right, like if the things about government don't work well. And so we're really going to measure how well we're doing based on how well we give people back their time to be able to live a good life, to feel secure, and to understand that justice belongs to them also.
Childcare is a big piece of this, right? In terms of time. I mean, this is and also money. I mean, the average working family is spending a fortune on childcare if they want to, have a second job in the family. And this was a big part of the mayor's,
That's right.
campaign. How is that coming?
Yeah. Well, it was one of his first announcements was working with the governor to secure the funding for his promise of creating universal childcare for 2-year-old children. And we've already seen that that has affected the way people are thinking about the most personal decisions they have to make, whether they will have a child, whether they can stay and live in a city that they love. And so we're just getting started, but he made a big announcement about that. And we also have to make sure that those care workers get to benefit as well, right? The majority of caregivers are women. They're women of color. They're Black, brown, and Asian. They are immigrant women, the very workers who often are relegated to the margins of our economy. And this is a chance for us to do all of it right, to demonstrate that you can create more affordability and you also have to bring up wages and working conditions. That is how you truly address cost of living and quality of life.
Julie, one other question I have for you is just how are you enjoying your life now? I mean, you used to be in California where the weather was pretty good, where people kind of were loosey goosey and la la land, and now you're in New York City. and it's freezing, and you have a big smile on your face, but I know you're doing wonderful work, but how are you?
No, I mean, it is literally like the longest stretch of this kind of cold weather in a very long time. There are piles of snow, but as this mayor also said, if you can clear the snowstorm, the first big snowstorm in your administration, you are demonstrating just how important it is for city government to function, and that was a big part of our focus in the first month. And it was great because I went to Chinatown recently and met with former garment workers who are now tenant organizers. Think about
Mm,
that, right, Bob? That's very, very powerful.
wow.
But they were big fans of the mayor and also made it a point to tell me that they had never seen the streets of Chinatown cleared so beautifully after snow. So it is cold, but New York City is, it's magical, right?
It is magical. I mean, I grew up not too far from New York, but I'm glad that you've discovered the magic. I mean, it's a lot of people, a lot of people don't.
And we will work every day to make sure everybody gets to experience the magic, right? Because it is, and it's also a place where I feel like the embrace of the beautiful diversity of all communities is very front and center here. And in that way, and in so many others, it's such a contrast to what's happening in the federal government and it's what's being forced down our throats about what matters and what's important. I think New York City stands as such a stark example, and I'm really proud to be part of that.
Julie, speaking of diversity, I mean, is there any fear, a reasonable fear that ICE is going to come to New York? I mean, I know the mayor had a good conversation with Trump in the White House. A lot of people were surprised at how nicely that went. I think Trump was frankly afraid of him. Trump is very nice to people that have a lot of power and confidence, and certainly the mayor did that. But let's seriously, what about ICE? Is it
Me?
I I mean, I think every responsible city is, aware and needs to be ready for the possibility of what this federal administration has been doing that is so disgusting and vicious, and illegal. And so that's true here, in New York City too. And I think there's also just a sense of anxiety across the country, even when ICE hasn't been deployed, because of what is just what everybody's seeing. And you've seen, right, New York City, they're not shy about what people believe in here, and so people have been protesting and speaking out against what is happening, even if it's not here in New York City at the moment, right? But in LA and Chicago and Portland and DC, and of course, most recently in Minneapolis. So we are prepared. The mayor has been very clear that we are a city that's going to protect our immigrants, and there's actually an Office of Immigrant Affairs that falls under my portfolio too, and I see that as being ready to defend the immigrant communities across New York City, but also building a life that fully embraces the beauty of what immigrants bring to New York City. So we got to be ready, but we cannot be controlled by the insanity of what happens at the federal level under Donald Trump.
Well, absolutely. Julie Sue, you are terrific. You are a good friend, and I appreciate your time. I know you have to run, but for everybody out there, I just want you to know how much I appreciate, how much we appreciate Mayor Mamdani and Julie Sue, Deputy Mayor of New York City, and keep on doing the great things you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Always good to see you.
Bye.